There are a lot of ranks in Rainbow Six Siege, so no matter which one you're in, I guarantee you could use some tips in order to get you to the next one. The worst of the worst being Copper. Now, the first out of 7 tips that I have for you Copper players out there is unlocking the correct operators. Now, if you're in Copper, chances are you're pretty new to the game, which means you don't have all of the operators unlocked, which means you need to know which operators to unlock first. This would be wall denial operators like Bandit or Cave, or wall breachers like Ace or Thermite. It would be anybody that helps them get walled open. Pretty much any utility heavy operator you want to unlock first. Don't really worry about trap operators or operators that are focused on getting kills. Just get hard support operators because if you're new, chances are you'll be thrown on hard support anyways. My second copper tip is following your teammates. Now, this is something that is very, very valued the higher up you go, because the more that you follow your teammates, chances are they know where they're going. So if you follow them, you're going to end up in the right place, which is super important in copper when you don't know where you're going. Hell, me, even a champ player on this new map, I sometimes have no idea where I'm going to. So making sure that you're following your teammates to know and learn maps and learn where to push, pretty important, especially early in the game. Something else that's very important when you're early in the game is just playing the game more. If you're in Copper, chances are you're new, and the more you play the game, the more seasoned and experienced you'll be, which can really help you get to the Bronze rank. Out of all 7 tips on my Copper list, this is probably the most effective one. Literally just playing the game more. Something else that is really, really effective is getting off of 60 FOV. If you go into your settings and you see the FOV slider, crank it all the way up to 90. You can have it as low as like 83, but I wouldn't do anything lower than that because then it makes it to where you really can't see anybody on the sides of you and it can get you killed. Something else that can get you killed is not watching the clock, which is my next tip. A lot of people that are new to the game don't know how to manage their time wisely, whether it be because they're using too much utility and they're playing too slow and then they have 30 seconds left and they lose the round, or because they're running in the site whenever they have 2 minutes on the clock that they could be using to drone. So making sure that you're watching the clock to further manage your time is a great tip for my copper players out there. An even better tip though would be learning every single operator. Now this is actually a lot easier than it seems. In Siege right now, they have the operator selection screen whenever you load into a game. If you just literally press escape, you can see how to use the ability of every single operator. It does the exact same thing in the operator menu too, so you can learn what your operator does or what your teammates operators do or what your enemy operators do too within the span of like 20 minutes. Now that you've learned how to actually play every operator, you should also learn how to counter every single operator. A lot of the times people will die to random traps they didn't know existed, or get slowed down or blinded by random traps they didn't know existed either. So making sure how to learn every operator and learn how to counter each one will greatly help you in a utility-heavy game. Now that was just one out of 8 different ranks that I'm going to be going over in today's video. So if you want to see your rank, timestamps are below. The next of which being Bronze. Now, the first of 7 tips that I have for Bronze players is finding a good sensitivity. I see a lot of people making the mistake of just playing on a native sensitivity or not finding a sensitivity that they're the best at naturally. Also, copying sensitivities is not a good idea at all because they make their sensitivity good. The sensitivity doesn't make them good. So just find one that works for you and drill it. Something you should also find for yourself is optimal keybinds. A lot of the keybinds that come native with the game are not good or optimal, and can actually hinder you when playing the game. So making sure that you find keybinds that work for you, that are easy to press, that don't hinder your gameplay, is crucially important, especially in the lower ranks when you're still fresh and learning these keybinds in the first place. Something else you'll be learning very early on is droning before you enter rooms. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of either over droning and droning out the entire map, and then somebody has entered the room that they were in by the time they drone the entire map, or they don't drone enough, which is the more common mistake, and they just kind of walk in without a drone. This is really bad because you want to know if somebody's in front of you, so droning out the room that you're about to enter is crucially important if you want to not die every single attacking round. Something else that can help you win attacking rounds is banning the correct operators. I see way too many people, especially in the lower ranks, banning Cade whenever they have Thatcher on the table. Why would you ever do that? Thatcher counters Cade. Wouldn't make sense to do that, right? So just logically thinking about the bans that you're doing, especially when it comes to operators, is crucial in a lower rank. Something else that is absolutely crucial whenever you're in a low rank, or really any rank for that matter, is aiming head level. Now this is something that you should start doing when you're even low rank, because even high rank players don't do this more than like 60% of the time. Aiming head level can make it to where you one-shot headshot people instead of necessarily just not hitting them and having to put multiple bullets in them, and it can be the difference between you winning or losing a gunfight. So it's very, very important that you drill this now so you get the muscle memory that you're going to use later. Something else that you'll definitely be using later is learning the in-game roles. You need to learn what a support operator is. You need to learn what an entry operator is, a fragger, a roamer, an anchor. You need to learn what flank watch is. Every single operator has a role in the game that they fall into, and you never want more than 2 of the same role on the same team. That way you're not oversaturating the same job and leaving out other jobs that could be filled by you that are maybe more important to the situation at hand. Something else that's crucially important is not exposing yourself to more than one angle. This is the most common positioning tip that you can get in every single game, not just in Siege. Exposing yourself to more than one angle allows you to be shot by more than one person. And if you've ever played an FPS game before, you know that this is bad, because it's much harder to kill 2 people at once than it is to take a 50-50 and kill 1 person. So making sure that whenever you're in a position, you're not exposing yourself to more than one angle can win or lose you gunfights. But now that we're moving on to the next rank, you should be winning a lot more gunfights, because now we're in Silver. My first tip for Silver players is you should learn every map. By now you've been playing the game for probably, I'd say, 100 or 200 hours, so you should learn most of the maps by now, and if you don't, just go into a custom game and walk around until you have it memorized, which should take maybe 10 minutes, and there's 16 ranked maps in total, so if you haven't learned any of the maps by far, which is not really the case, in the worst case scenario, it'll take you a few hours to learn all the maps. Not only should you learn every map, but you should learn every single default take for every single map. This comes really easy, especially if you listen to my copper tip where you just follow your teammates, because if you follow your teammates, you'll learn what your teammates are doing, because they're doing it for a reason. They know the default takes, they know where to attack, what walls to open, what to do after they open the wall, what smokes to get down, so just following your teammates and learning the default takes can be very, very important. Not only should you learn the default takes, but you should also learn the default holds. It's essentially the defender parallel to the attacker version that I just went over. Learning the default holds can very much help you whenever you're on the defense, because it shows you where to position, it shows you which operators play in which position, and it also just helps you win rounds more because you have more map knowledge. Something else that can help you win rounds more is learning which operators are best for taking and holding sites. We just learned that you should definitely learn how to take sites and definitely learn how to hold sites. But which operators should you play in order to do that? Well, that's what you need to find out. Is it better to play smoke or mute on this certain site? Is it better to play Cade or Bandit? Is it better to attack with an ace or a thermite for this wall? If you don't know the answer to that on every single wall, then you have some learning to do. I'm not expecting you to know every single wall and every single hold in the game, but you should at least start learning it in the lower ranks so you have it nailed down in the higher ones. Something else that you should learn in the lower ranks is every single attachment. You should know what each attachment does by now. And it's as simple as going into the operator screen, clicking on somebody with a lot of attachments like War and MPX, and just reading up on what they do so that you know which attachments to run to easier control recoil and to get better gunfights. It's something that's very fast and easy for you to do. Something that's way more slow paced and takes a lot more time, though, is start improving your mechanics. You should start learning how to track. You should start learning how to flick. You should start learning pretty much everything mechanically in an FPS game, and especially Siege, where there's more mechanics than the average game. Learning this now at a base level at a low rank will greatly help your improvisation whenever you're trying to learn them in a higher rank and master them. Something else you should learn at a higher rank, but more specifically in Silver, is secondary utility. Now, if you thought that learning all of the primary utilities was very hard, then secondary utility is going to be a breeze, because there's only so many secondary gadgets, and a lot of the defenders and attackers bring the same one, so it's pretty easy to learn. By now, you should have all of them memorized on what they do and how to counter them. Now that you've gotten out of the lower ranks, let's go into the most average rank in the game, which is Gold. Congratulations, you're an average player, but you have a long way to go, which is why my first tip is getting on cams early in the round. By now you know that there are support players and there are fraggers when it comes to the defense. So you should now know that whenever you're playing as support, it's kind of boring at the beginning of the round, because you're waiting for your roamers to die or for the attackers to rush site, so what do? Well, the answer is get on cameras. If you're on cameras, it can actually help your roamers know where to roam based off of the information you're giving them on where the attackers are pushing. It can also help you know people are rushing so you can better set up the site accordingly to counter their rush. Something else that's great for rushing is learning quick peeks. Now, learning quick peek is a mechanic that is very specific to Siege, because it essentially is a movement that you do in Siege that allows you to get information if you don't have any piece of utility that can get information for you. It's a way to clear the room or clear angles if you don't have any other way of doing it yourself. Not only should you learn how to quick peek, but in Gold you should also learn when to quick peek. You don't want to be quick peeking every angle, because like I said, it's a last resort information tactic. If you have drones, there's no reason to quick peek the door. Just drone it out. At least you won't be exposing your head to a potential pre-fire. Something else that's crucially important at Gold is exploring more operators. Now by now you should have at least half of the operators unlocked, but exploring more and learning which every single one does will allow you to know which ones that you want to play and which ones you are good at, because playing something that you're good at is naturally just going to get you more kills and make you win more. If you find that you're really good at Vigil Botch G or you're really good at Clash, who cares what your teammates say? Just play it, because at the end of the day, you're winning the game, so it doesn't really matter. Something else that will help you win the game tremendously is holding angles tighter. I see a lot of people holding angles and giving the enemies a lot of room to swing them and making their crosshairs have to move because of it. If you just make the area tighter at which you're holding the angle, it makes you a lot harder to hit, and it makes the enemies a lot easier to see and swing off of based off of the information your pixel peek is providing you. Speaking of gunfights, you should also learn when to pre-fire. I see a lot of people making the mistake of pre-firing all of the time, but you never really want to be doing this. You only want to be pre-firing whenever you have information to pre-fire somebody through. It's really easy to do, but you don't want to be pre-firing too much, because then you'll be giving the information to the enemy team. Speaking of information, my last tip for Gold is that you need to start communicating. This is the point where team coordination is literally the biggest difference between you winning or losing a game, because everybody kind of knows what they're doing now. So making sure that you go buy a $20 microphone from Target, at least at the bare minimum, to communicate with your teammates is something that will greatly impact your win rate, your KD, and most importantly, your rank, because by now, you've reached Platinum. Now, the first tip that I have for Platinum players is learning when to be aggressive and when to be passive on defense. This is something that a lot of people struggle with, especially because we just got out of the 1.5 TDM meta. Now, being aggressive you only want to do on defense if you're down in man count, if there's more people on the attack than there are on the defense. This is because if you're passive instead, they're just going to swarm the bond play, and they're going to make you take multiple people on at once, which is very hard for you to do, like I said earlier. So making sure that you're only being aggressive to even out the man count and playing passive when you're not is crucially important when you're playing in Platinum. Now, you also need to learn the flip side of this coin. When do you be aggressive or when do you be passive on attack? Well, typically you have to be slightly more aggressive on attack because you have to go to them in order to get the bomb down, so you need to learn how to take space. But you don't want to be overly aggressive. The same rule applies on defense as attack. If you're up in man count, maybe start to slow down. Maybe start to drone at the bomb site, use more utility. If you're down, you want to actually start baiting aggressively and quick peeking and getting more kills to even out the man count, so the defense doesn't have an easy time holding down the bomb site. Speaking of holding down the bomb site, something you should learn in Platinum is holding angles from the opposite side of where someone is swinging. If you're holding a doorway and you know they have to swing from the left to the right side of that doorway, then you should be holding the right. You always want to be holding the angle the opposite side of wherever the attacker is going to swing out of it. Another example, if you know they're swinging from the right, hold the left side. If you know that they're swinging from the left, be on the right side of your door. It's very easy, and it can win you a lot of gunfights, and I made an entire video on why it's important that you can go check out later. Something else that you definitely need to know is that you shouldn't try to be fast with your mechanics. Now, I made a video titled How to Get Faster Mechanics, and one of the things that I talked about in this video specifically is that in order to get faster mechanics, you need to get accurate mechanics first. And in Platinum, whenever you're not quite in a high rank yet, doing this before you try to speed up your mechanics is crucial. So making sure that you're actually accurate, even if it's slow, before you try to speed up everything you're doing because you want to look like Bolo, is very important if you're trying to rank up into the next rank. Something else that will very much help you rank up in the next rank is finding a duo to play with, or maybe even a trio to play with. Starting to play with dedicated teammates will actually make you a lot better at the game, because not only do you have dedicated communication that you can use that you don't have to rely on randoms for, but also it allows you to learn certain roles better. Because if you have a guy that you duo with all the time that's naturally just better at fragging than you, then you'll start to play support more, and you'll learn support better, and you'll learn which roles you're good at and which roles you're bad at. Something else that will make you learn what you're good and bad at is not blaming your teammates. In Platinum, people have egos. It's not really an unknown thing, because Platinum to some people is seen as a highish rank, so now all of a sudden when people get this rank, they just think they're good. And because of the fact that they do this, they blame their teammates for everything because they have this huge ego. But if you don't blame your teammates, even for stuff that's probably their fault, and you try to find issues within yourself, you'll actually be able to improve a lot more than if you were just blaming your teammates for everything. Speaking of dropping the ego, that's my final tip for Plat. Just drop the ego. You're not the best player in the world. You still have a lot of ranks to go. You're honestly like kind of middle of the pack. You're slightly above average. You're not that good, so drop the ego and realize that you can improve so that you can improve. Because the next rank is actually considered a high rank, which is Emerald. Now, because you're in a high rank, you can take a lot of notes from people who are in an even higher rank, which is why the first tip I have in Emerald is starting to copy strats. There's a lot of solo queue strats, or a lot of just strats in general that aren't default necessarily, but are still really, really good that you should start copying. These strats typically are made by Pro League players or champion players that are in your rank, so if you see a strat that absolutely confuses you or absolutely destroys you, copy it. If it works on you, chances are it'll probably work on other people too. One thing about the higher ranks as well is that you start to understand not only should you adjust your playstyle for the man count like we talked about earlier, but you should adjust your playstyle for the map you're playing. Now, a map like Theme Park, where there's a lot to roam clear, you can be pretty passive on as a defender. You can kind of give him space and do what you need to do and not necessarily take unnecessary gunfights. But if you're on a map like Border, where it's a very, very small map and there's not a lot of space that you can hold, you want to be very, very aggressive, and you want to stand your ground and take gunfights that may be risky, but can keep you in the game, because the second you give up space, you've essentially given up half the map because of how small the map is. So understanding the playstyle for each map is very important if you want to win. By now, because you're in a high rank, like I said, you also should learn most callouts. If you don't know most of the callouts in the game, you need to learn them, because not only does it help you tell your teammates where the enemies are, but it also helps you understand what your teammates are talking about whenever they call out Harry Potter on Oregon. If you don't know what that is, you got some work to do. Something else that you should definitely work on is situational awareness. Now, like I said, there are certain situations that can completely change your playstyle. Not only is it the man count, not only is it the map, the callouts, but something else that it is learning the phases of the round. Whenever you learn phases of the round, you understand what you need to do with situational awareness and what you need to do in those situations. Let's say there's 30 seconds left, and you're a defender, and someone's planting. Do you push them and stop the plant and take a gunfight, or do you push them and maybe trick them into thinking that you're pushing so that they get off, and then you keep doing that until they waste all the time and you easily kill them? The second option. So learning little situational awareness tips like that will greatly affect how you're good at the game and what you're able to do in clutch situations. Something else that will make you way, way better at the game is making a warm-up routine. I've talked about this, I think, in the past 10 videos in a row on my channel that I've made. Because it really is that important. It can make you a very, very consistent player because you're consistently warming up and getting your mechanics ready for the day whenever you log on. It might seem unnecessary, but if you're ever inconsistent, it's because you don't have a warm-up routine. And that brings me to my next point. Not only should you be a consistent player, but you should be playing consistently. What do I mean by this? Well, if you want to be good at the game, you can't play the game one day, take a week off, and come back the next day expecting to be good and ranking up. No, if you want to get better at the game, which is why you're here, you should kind of make it a priority to get better if that's what you want to do with your life, right? Maybe play once a day, even if it's just for an hour or two. It doesn't matter, but playing consistently on a timetable will make it a lot easier for you to consistently get better. That's just how it works. Now, something about Emerald is it's kind of the rank that separates people who are mid at the game and average at the game and people who are actually kind of good at the game. And one thing that is able to make that evolution happen in a player is just taking care of yourself. This goes outside of the game. Are you sleeping right? Are you eating right? Are you a clean individual? Do you have confidence? These things can greatly affect your gameplay much more than you might think, so make sure that you're just taking care of yourself as a human being. But now that you've left the cocoon of that transitional stage of Emerald, our next and arguably one of the highest ranks in the game is Diamond. One thing that you need to learn about Diamond is aim training. Now, aim training can be very, very important if you do it in the correct way, which is in-game. If you're aim training, that looks like going to the shooting range. That looks like playing arcades until you have calluses on the tips of your fingers. It looks like just training your aim. Because if you do that, you'll get better aim. Better than average. Better than most people, actually. Because over 70% of Pro League doesn't even train their aim. So if you're doing it, you can get to the higher ranks. Now, like I talked about earlier, if you want to get faster mechanics, first you need to get accurate mechanics. But if you're in Diamond, chances are you've got pretty semi-accurate mechanics. So now, this is where you would start to find faster mechanics. Maybe get faster, maybe start playing a little bit more aggressively, maybe sprint around a little bit more, be more unpredictable. It can make you seem or be a better player. Something else that can make you a better player is mastering quick peeking. We talked about learning it, but now we're going to talk about mastering it. Something that can help you master it is turning your lean keys on to toggle. This makes it a lot more clean and seamless, but also you should learn how far away from the door you're quick peeking, depending on which scope you're bringing, depending on which attachment you're bringing, because now you have an attachment that makes you ADS faster than a lot of people are going to be using, right? So like mastering quick peeking, especially at the higher ranks and at this level, is going to be very, very important for you. Something else that is arguably the most important thing I'll be talking about in this rank is finding a stack. We talked about finding a duo, finding a trio earlier, but finding an entire stack is something completely different. It's on a completely different level of what you're able to do. The amount of communication you have is unprecedented. The amount of strats that you're able to do is infinite. You can coordinate entire competitive strats in a ranked game if you really want to try that hard, and you can really wipe the floor with some of these casual ranked lords. Like it's pretty crazy what you're able to do if you just have a dedicated stack that's willing to learn as much as you. Something else that can make you a lot more willing to learn is watching content. And if you're doing that right now, then congratulations, you at least got one of the 7 tips. Watching content like people like me or people like other people on Twitch or on YouTube can help you improve in ways that you didn't even know you could improve of, because people having different perspectives can help you learn a lot more than you thought was possible. Something else that can help you learn a lot more is improving your specs. Once you realize that your monitor is probably not the best that it could be and you play on a different monitor, you actually will become better at the game. Like, I have a 144 hertz monitor, for example, but the entire time for like 3 years of my Siege career, I had it plugged into the wrong port, so it was only on 60 FPS. But the second I actually plugged it into my graphics drive port and I actually started playing on 144 hertz, it was absolutely insane the amount of shots I was able to hit. The amount of clarity I had, the quick peeking I could do, it was just crazy. So, and that's just a monitor, right? Imagine improving your PC, improving your internet, improving your mouse, your keyboard, your mouse pad, whatever it may be. Like, improving your specs can actually be like a clear-cut difference between how good or not good you are at the game. The last thing that can improve that difference is gaining and using confidence. This is more of a lifestyle tip, but the more confident you are in yourself and in your aim and in your game sense, the better decision making you'll have. Because if you're not confident, chances are you'll be nervous, which is an emotional thing that can make you make emotional decisions that aren't actually peak and good for the round of hand. Now that we're out of Diamond, we've gotten to the highest rank in the game, the best of the best players, which is Champion. My first tip for Champion is watching Pro League. You may think in Champ you're the best of the best players, but you're not. You're actually around average for good players because there's so many champs right now. So if you want to get better, one of the best things to improve, even in just anything in life, is watching people who are better than you, which would be Pro League. We'll teach you angles you never even knew existed. We'll teach you strats you didn't know existed. We'll teach you combos of different operators you never know could be cohesive. But now that you're in Champ, chances are you can kind of understand why they're doing the things they're doing, which can make you actually able to make your own strats. This is very important. In Emerald, we talked about copying other people's strats, but if you're in Champ, chances are you're the people making the strats for the Emeralds to copy, because you understand the game on a fundamental level better than most people do in the game, which means you're able to make strats that fit the game at hand. The third tip for the highest rank in the game is fitting the meta. Now, the actual meta and how the game is played really doesn't matter until you're in Champ, because if you are in any of the lower ranks, you can kind of just mechanic your way all the way to Champ, or just use tips that I've been giving you. But now that you're actually in the highest rank, you need a way to kind of get ahead of everybody else in your rank, and finding meta operators and meta strategies can help you do that, because the meta exists for a reason. Not only should you find a meta and stick with it, but you also should main operators. Now, I know what a lot of people may think. Siege is a game that's situational, where you need to use certain operators for certain situations. It's tactical. No, it's not. I mean, honestly, it hasn't been that game for years. If you're really, really good at Ace, and Ace works every single round, which he does, by the way, then main Ace. Play Ace every single round. No one's going to complain. You're always going to get value out of him. And if you're good, just play him. Who cares? If Azami is really, really good, you're really good at her, just main Azami. No one's going to care. I, for one, completely main Ace, and I have no trouble hitting Champion every single season. On defense, I play Mute religiously. I play Wamai religiously. I play Castle and Azami religiously. Fenrir, who cares? But I play certain operators every single round, and it doesn't matter what site setup it is. It doesn't matter what map it is. You can play operators every single round. No one's really going to care. You're going to still win. Just find operators that you have a high win rate on and a high KD on, and just main them. By now, because you're in Champ, you're a really good player. So you should learn every single angle there is to learn. Now, I'm a champ player, and because I still need to improve like this list tells me I need to do, obviously, I still need to learn every single angle, right? I haven't done that yet. There are people that have. That's why you're able to see people who pre-fire through random doorways to get the easiest kills they've ever seen in their life because they know exactly what's on the other side of a barricaded doorway because they've learned every single angle in the game. You should learn this too. You're in champ, there's no excuse. Not only should you learn every angle, but you should learn every common pre-fire. If I'm walking in through the construction door, I should learn exactly where to pre-fire the rafters headholes that are contesting me, right? Every single example of where you should pre-fire, you should learn. My final tip for champion is you should start playing competitively. Now, watching Pro League is one thing, but actually playing in the setting of competitive play will teach you so much more than you could ever learn with any other tip that I've given you on this list. Genuinely. I played competitively in T3 teams before, and I was the best player I ever was when I was playing competitively. Honestly, I was the best. I was the peak player I ever was. The best I ever was at Siege when I was playing competitively. So you should definitely get on that as soon as possible, because not only will you hit champ, but you'll hit the top 1,000 of champs easily. But with that out of the way, my name's Alka. Sub the channel down below and check out this next video, and I hope to see you there. Later.